are moments in life when what we see and what we believe don't seem to agree. You look around and everything feels heavy, out of order, and unfair. You've prayed, you've hoped, you've worked, but it still looks like nothing is changing. That's the first reality, the one your eyes can touch, the one your emotions can feel, the one that keeps you awake when the world is asleep. But then there's another voice, quiet yet unshakable, whispering that this pain is not the end of your story. That whisper is truth. The truth that even in the valley, there's purpose. Even in silence, something sacred is being built inside of you. Sometimes the hardest place to stand is in between those two realities. On one side, there's the visible bills, heartbreaks, disappointments, and the weight of what hasn't happened yet. On the other, there's the invisible faith promises, destiny, and strength that's still in the making. It's easy to trust when everything looks like progress. It's harder when every step forward feels like another fall. But growth doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like survival. Sometimes it looks like tears in the middle of the night, whispering to yourself that somehow, someway, this season still has meaning. The first reality screams for your attention. It tells you you're losing. You're behind, you're forgotten. It points to what's missing, what's broken, what's unfair. But the truth doesn't shout, it reminds. It reminds you that the same soil that buries a seed is the one that protects it while it grows. You're not being buried. You're being planted. You're not being overlooked. You're being prepared. The truth isn't in what's happening to you. It's in what's happening through you. Every closed door is shaping your faith. Every delay is training your patience. Every disappointment is teaching you to depend on something deeper than sight. When you start believing the truth over the reality, everything begins to shift. You stop looking for quick answers and start trusting the process. You stop begging for clarity and start resting in peace. You realize that faith isn't about ignoring reality. It's about seeing beyond it. You learn that both can exist at the same time, the pain and the promise, the struggle and the strength, the loss and the lesson. You can be breaking and becoming in the same breath. You can be hurting and healing at once. You can be standing in the middle of what doesn't make sense and still be walking toward purpose. Reality will tell you to quit. It will tell you you've failed too many times. It will tell you your season is over and your story has no new chapters. But truth reminds you that there's still ink left in your pen. It reminds you that endings are often disguises for beginnings. It tells you that maybe this isn't the end of your dream. Maybe it's the refinement of your dream. Because truth doesn't just comfort, it confronts. It doesn't just make you feel better, it makes you stronger. It demands that you look at what's real, but still choose what's right. When you live between two realities, you learn to walk with vision instead of sight. Sight tells you what is, but vision shows you what that will be. And the people who walk by vision will always confuse those who live by sight. They'll wonder how you can still smile when everything's falling apart. They'll question how you can keep believing when all the odds are stacked against you. But you'll know it's not because you're blind to pain. It's because you've met the truth that lives beneath it. You've discovered that brokenness doesn't mean defeat. That waiting doesn't mean wasted time. And that silence doesn't mean absence. You start realizing that even though reality is loud, it's temporary. Pain fades, confusion clears, storms pass. But truth remains. It's the quiet voice that says you're more than what happened to you. It's the steady hand that lifts you when life tries to pull you down. It's the unseen promise that even when you can't trace the plan, you can trust the purpose. There are days when the two realities fight inside you, the one that feels hopeless and the one that knows hope never dies, the one that wants to give up and the one that refuses to, the one that believes it's over and the one that whispers, not yet. It's in those days you learn who you really are, not the version of you that smiles for the world, but the version that holds on when no one's watching, the version that still prays even when the answers don't come. The version that's learned that faith isn't always loud. It's sometimes the quiet act of showing up anyway. That's when the truth becomes real to you. Not just something you repeat, but something you live. You begin to see that your reality can change in a moment, but your truth has always been there, waiting for you to believe it again. There's a difference between the version of yourself the world sees and the one you meet when you stand alone in front of the mirror. Out there, we wear our masks, polished smiles, brave words, confident walks, because the world often rewards appearances more than authenticity. The mask tells people, well, I'm fine. Even when you're falling apart, it tells them, I've moved on. When your heart is still heavy, it protects you from judgment, from questions you're not ready to answer, from the pain of being misunderstood. But behind the mask, there's the mirror, a reflection that doesn't care about filters. A reflection that whispers the truth no one else can hear. The mirror doesn't lie. It reveals what the mask hides. The insecurities, the healing, the softness, the hope still fighting to breathe under the weight of everything you've survived. There's a strange kind of strength that comes from learning to face your reflection without running away from it. Because the mirror doesn't just show your flaws, it shows your resilience. It shows the eyes that have seen heartbreak yet still search for beauty. It shows the scars that tell stories of battles you thought you'd never win. It shows that even when the world didn't clap for you, you still kept moving. But sometimes we get so used to the mask that we forget how to see ourselves beyond it. We start believing that we are only as strong as the version of us that the world accepts. We begin to perform instead of heal. We smile out of habit, not out of joy. We pose to prove we're okay instead of allowing ourselves to not be. The mask makes us look together. But the mirror reminds us that being real is not the same as being broken. It's being honest. It's being human. There's power in admitting that you don't have it all figured out, that some days your strength looks more like tears than triumphs. The mirror doesn't shame you for that. It invites you to be gentle with yourself. To stop pretending that survival has to look graceful. It tells you that your worth isn't tied to how well you perform, but how truthfully you live. The mirror is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's where healing begins, where masks fall off and authenticity takes its place. We wear masks because the world doesn't always welcome our truth. People praise perfection, but rarely celebrate process. They want to see the glow up, not the growing pains. They want the testimony without the tears. So we learn to hide the parts of us that are still becoming. We smile in pictures, quote positivity, and act like we've healed because showing the process feels too vulnerable. But what if the parts you hide are the parts that hold your power? What if your unpolished truth is the very thing that could set you free? Every time you take off the mask, give your soul a chance to breathe. You give your spirit space to recover from all the pretending. You make room for honesty to live again. The mirror might show you what's real, but it also shows you what's redeemable. You can look at yourself and see not just what went wrong, but what's still possible. You can look at the pain and see potential. You can look at the flaws and still find beauty, because the mirror isn't asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to be present. It's reminding you that authenticity will take you places performance never could. When you stop running from your reflection, you begin to rebuild your relationship with yourself. You stop needing validation from people who only know your mask. You start creating peace with the person who knows your truth. It takes courage to face that version of yourself. It's easier to keep pretending, to stay hidden behind the image that feels safe. But safety and healing aren't the same thing. Healing requires honesty. It asks you to confront the pain you've been avoiding, to admit that the mask doesn't protect, it only delays the process. When you look into the mirror long enough, you begin to see that you were never as broken as you thought, just unfinished. The cracks in your reflection are not proof of your weakness. They're proof that you've lived. They show the places where the light gets in. The mask may win applause, but the mirror wins peace. The mask makes you look strong. The mirror helps you become strong. The mask convinces others that you're fine. The mirror convinces you that you're worthy even when you're not. The world may never fully understand the version of you that exists behind closed doors, but that's okay. That version doesn't need to be understood. It just needs to be accepted. That's where true confidence comes from. Not from pretending to be whole, but from knowing that even in your brokenness, you are still enough. When you finally learn to stop hiding behind the mask, you don't lose control. You gain clarity. You stop performing for approval and start living for peace. You realize that authenticity doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. Because every time you choose to face the mirror, you reclaim a piece of yourself that the mask tried to hide. You start walking lighter, breathing deeper, loving yourself louder. You start to see that the person in the mirror, the one who's been through storms, battles, and silent wars, isn't your weakness. That's your truth. That's your becoming. There comes a moment in every person's journey when reality and truth start pulling in opposite directions. Reality points to what your eyes can see: closed doors, unanswered prayers, missed chances, and dreams that seem to be slipping further away with every sunrise. It tells you you're not qualified, not chosen, not enough. It reminds you of every failure, every delay, every moment that didn't turn out the way you hoped. But somewhere deeper, beneath the noise of fear and doubt, there's a quiet truth whispering that this isn't where your story ends. It's that still, small voice that refuses to let you quit. The one that keeps pushing you forward even when everything around you says stop. That's the voice of faith. And it doesn't speak to your circumstances. It speaks to your destiny. Reality can make you feel trapped, but truth reminds you that you were never meant to stay where you started. You might be standing in a place that feels like limitation, but truth says it's just preparation. It's the in-between space where strength is being built in silence, where courage is growing roots beneath the surface. Reality says you're surrounded by walls. Truth says you're standing in a room that's about to open into something greater. But that's the hardest place to be. The space between what is and what will be. Because in that space, it's easy to doubt, to wonder if you misheard the calling, if maybe the dream was never meant for you. Yet truth never leaves. It waits for you to remember that faith doesn't need evidence to believe. There's a war between the voice of sight and the voice of vision. Sight shows you obstacles. Vision shows you purpose. Sight tells you the odds. Vision reminds you of promises. And in that battle, you have to decide which one will lead you, because the path to purpose doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes through seasons that test your patience, situations that stretch your faith, and moments that seem to contradict what you believe. Reality tells you to let go, to lower your expectations, to accept less than what you're worth. But truth whispers that you were made for more, that you were built for something beyond what you can see, and that the wait isn't punishment, it's preparation. Every person who has ever achieved something meaningful has stood in this same place of contradiction. They've heard the world tell them you can't, and they've chosen to believe you will, because truth doesn't always align with logic. Truth doesn't need permission to be real. You may not see the outcome yet, but that doesn't mean it's not already written. The process might be painful, but pain has always been a midwife for purpose. The seed doesn't bloom without pressure, and the diamond doesn't shine without fire. So when reality feels unbearable, it might just mean you're closer to breakthrough than you think. Sometimes the hardest part is holding on to a vision that no one else can see. People might laugh at your faith, question your decisions, or label your hope as delusion, but you have to understand, not everyone is meant to see what you see. Some people live by facts, others live by faith, and when faith leads, you walk by conviction, not by comfort. You move even when you're uncertain, because something in you knows that obedience is greater than understanding. Truth doesn't require proof to act. It moves before the evidence appears. That's how mountains shift, doors open, and impossible things unfold. You may look at your life right now and see more failure than progress, more loss than gain. But truth isn't intimidated by where you are. It's already standing in the future, waiting for you to catch up. It knows that every detour has purpose. Every setback has a seed of strength inside it. You may have been overlooked, but truth says you're not forgotten. You may have been broken, but truth says you're still chosen. Reality measures your worth by success. Truth measures it by resilience. Reality says the storm will drown you. Truth says you'll walk on water if you dare to believe. There will be days when believing feels foolish, When your faith feels fragile and your patience feels thin. But that's when truth does its best work. It steps into the silence between your fear and your faith and reminds you who you are. It reminds you that your story didn't begin in defeat. So it won't end there. You are not defined by what hasn't happened yet. You are defined by the courage to keep showing up even when the outcome is still unseen. Because truth doesn't deny reality. It transforms it. It takes the same broken pieces that life handed you and builds something stronger, something wiser, something you never thought you'd become. Reality says you're at the end of the road, but truth says this is the turning point. Reality tells you the mountain is too high, but truth tells you the climb is making you stronger. Reality says you don't have what it takes, but truth says everything you need is already inside you. There's power in choosing which voice to answer. One will keep you stuck in fear, and the other will lead you into purpose. One will make you shrink, and the other will make you rise. The moment you stop listening to the limits of reality and start walking in the confidence of truth, that's the moment everything begins to change. Fear has a way of building stories that sound real. It paints pictures of everything that could go wrong, every door that might close, every dream that might fail before it even begins. It whispers in your ear that you're not ready, not strong enough, not worthy of what you've been praying for. And when you've been disappointed too many times, fear starts to feel like protection. It convinces you that playing small is safer than risking heartbreak again. It tells you that it's better to stay comfortable than to step into the unknown. That's how fear builds false realities. Worlds made of what ifs and worst case scenarios. But faith builds something stronger. It builds a foundation that doesn't crumble under pressure. It replaces fear's lies with promises. It doesn't ignore the storm. It just reminds you that even in the storm, you're not alone. Fear and faith can't hold the same space in your heart for long. One silences your spirit. The other sets it free. Fear needs proof before it believes. But faith believes before it sees. Fear looks for reasons to quit, but faith finds reasons to keep going. There's a moment in every journey when you have to decide which one will guide you. Because fear doesn't just come from the unknown. It also comes from remembering the past. It comes from the times you tried and failed, from the wounds that never fully healed, from the voices that made you doubt your own worth. But faith speaks a different language. It doesn't deny what happened, but it refuses to let it define what's coming next. Faith begins where fear ends, and sometimes that means stepping into a place that doesn't make sense. It's walking forward even when your knees are shaking. It's saying yes when everything in you wants to say no. It's trusting that there's purpose in every delay and that your current struggle is shaping your future strength. Faith isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet courage. It's the whisper in the dark that says, keep going, even here. It's not the absence of fear. It's the decision not to let fear lead. Because fear will always give you reasons to stop, but faith will always give you one reason to continue, and that's hope. Sometimes fear disguises itself as logic. It tells you that you're being realistic, that you're just protecting your heart. But the truth is, fear doesn't protect you. It paralyzes you. It keeps you standing at the edge of your breakthrough, too afraid to take the next step. It convinces you that staying where you are is safer than stepping into the unknown. But faith sees the unknown as invitation, not intimidation. Faith knows that the place that scares you the most is often the place where you'll grow the most. It reminds you that courage isn't the absence of trembling. It's moving while you tremble. There are moments when fear will make you question everything you once believed. You'll wonder if the dream was too big, if the calling was too heavy, if the promise was even real. But faith steps in and reminds you that what's meant for you can't be undone by fear, failure, or delay. Reminds you that you were chosen long before you were challenged. That every time fear tried to silence you, something in your spirit still pushed you to speak. That every time you wanted to walk away, something stronger kept pulling you back. That's faith. It's not just belief, it's alignment. It's choosing to stand on what you know, even when what you see doesn't match it. Fear builds walls, but faith builds doors. Fear closes you off from possibilities, but faith opens you to miracles. Fear keeps you trapped in the cycle of what happened, but faith invites you to imagine what's still possible. You start to see that faith doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. It teaches you that storms don't always mean destruction. Sometimes they mean direction. It teaches you that sometimes losing what you thought you needed is what makes room for what you were meant to have all along. And when you start to walk in faith, fear begins to lose its voice. The truth is, faith doesn't erase fear overnight. It transforms it. It takes the energy that fear used to hold you back and turns it into fuel for purpose. It turns panic into prayer, worry into worship, doubt into determination. You begin to understand that courage isn't born from perfection. It's born from persistence. It's waking up every day and choosing to believe again, even after life has given you reasons not to. It's understanding that you don't have to have it all figured out to move forward. You just have to trust that the one who gave you the vision will also give you the strength to see it through. There are days when fear will knock louder than faith whispers. There are nights when anxiety will feel heavier than peace. But faith doesn't compete with fear. It overcomes it by reminding you who you are and whose you are. It tells you that the same strength that carried you through yesterday will carry you again today. It reminds you that courage isn't about never feeling afraid. It's about deciding that fear doesn't get to make your choices anymore. And when you reach that point, something powerful happens inside you. You stop running from fear and start walking through it. You stop seeing it as an enemy and start using it as evidence that something great is on the other side. Because fear only shows up when something valuable is near. The closer you get to your purpose, the louder fear becomes, but the louder faith grows too. Every day you wake up standing between two voices. One speaks from the outside, the other from within. The outside voice, the noise of the world, tells you who you should be, how you should act, what success should look like. It measures your worth by what you own, how you look, and who approves of you. It tells you that you need to hurry, that you're falling behind, that you're not enough until someone else says you are. That's the voice of reality. But then there's another voice, softer yet stronger, that doesn't need applause to be true. It's the voice that reminds you of who you were before the world tried to define you. The voice that speaks from the inside, carrying truth that doesn't waver when people walk away or when life doesn't go as planned. The moment you choose to listen to that inner truth, you start reclaiming your power. The world will always have an opinion, but not every opinion deserves your energy. You can spend your whole life trying to please people who don't even understand your purpose. You can bend yourself into shapes that fit their expectations and still feel empty inside. Because truth doesn't live in validation. It lives in authenticity. The more you try to earn approval, the more disconnected you become from your own soul. But when you choose truth, you stop chasing acceptance and start embracing alignment. You stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, am I being honest with myself? That shift changes everything, because once you know who you are, the noise around you starts to lose its power. Choosing truth over noise isn't easy. It's lonely sometimes. It means standing firm when others misunderstand you. It means saying no when it would be easier to say yes. It means walking away from spaces where your peace costs too much to stay. Truth doesn't always make you popular, but it will make you free, and freedom is what allows you to grow into the version of yourself that can carry your calling. The world rewards those who perform well, but heaven rewards those who live well. And living well means being faithful to your truth even when it's inconvenient. It means choosing what's right for your spirit instead of what's comfortable for your image. Every day, life gives you a choice. You can live as a reflection of what others think, or as a revelation of who you truly are. One will keep you constantly adjusting yourself to please people, while the other will teach you to be grounded even when approval fades. The moment you choose truth, you stop needing external confirmation. You begin to see that the applause of others will never replace the peace of being real. Because truth doesn't always sparkle. It often grows quietly, in the shadows, in the seasons where no one notices the work you're doing. But those Those are the seasons where you build unshakable strength. There's a reason truth feels so powerful. When you finally decide to live by it, it reconnects you to yourself. It restores the parts of you that pretending once silenced. It gives your spirit permission to exhale. You start realizing that you no longer need to prove your worth. It was never something you had to earn. You were already enough before the world taught you to question it. And once you understand that, you stop seeking permission to be yourself. You stop editing your story to make it easier for others to digest. You begin to live in a way that feels like peace instead of performance. Truth doesn't mean perfection. It means presence. It means showing up fully, flaws and all, without shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. It means honoring your emotions instead of hiding them. It means admitting when you're hurt, when you're healing, and when you're still learning. Because authenticity doesn't come from having it all together. It comes from being honest enough to say you don't. There's power in that kind of vulnerability, the kind that says, this is who I am right now, and that's enough. When you live like that, you attract people who see you for your heart, not your mask. The moment you start choosing truth, you'll notice that the things that once drained you begin to lose their grip. You won't crave approval from the same voices that used to intimidate you. You won't need to explain yourself to everyone who doesn't understand your growth. You'll learn to let silence speak for you, because truth doesn't need defending. It stands on its own. It doesn't chase acceptance. It invites peace. It doesn't fight for recognition. It flows naturally. The more you walk in it, the lighter you feel. You stop comparing your path to someone else's and start honoring your own. When you live by truth, you start making decisions from strength instead of fear. You begin to say yes because you're led, not because you're pressured. You begin to walk away from things that look good but don't feel right. You start recognizing that alignment matters more than applause. The world might not always understand you, but that's because truth doesn't always fit the pattern of what's familiar. Sometimes it calls you higher, away from the comfort of conformity and into the clarity of purpose. It pulls you out of places where you've been surviving and plants you in spaces where you can thrive. And when you get there, you'll realize that choosing truth wasn't about losing people. It was about finding yourself. There's a point in your journey where truth stops being something you talk about and becomes something you live. It's not in the easy seasons when everything feels right. It's in the moments when you're tested, when you're stretched, when you're walking through the kind of pain that no one claps for. That's when truth becomes evidence. You start realizing that every scar carries a story, not of what hurt you, but of what couldn't destroy you. You become living proof that healing is real, that strength can rise out of brokenness, and that growth can come from the places you once tried to hide. You stop just believing in transformation. You embody it, because truth doesn't need to be shouted to be powerful. It just needs to be lived consistently. When life breaks you open, it reveals what you're made of. The pressure, the loss, the uncertainty, they all become the fire that refines you. And in that refining, truth is uncovered. The world teaches you to show your highlight reel, to display your success and hide your struggle. But truth lives in the spaces in between. It's in the nights you cried yourself to sleep, but still woke up determined. It's in the seasons when no one saw your fight, yet you kept showing up anyway. That's what it means to become the evidence of truth. You don't just talk about perseverance, you embody it. You don't just quote faith, you walk it out even when the path is covered in fog. People often look at strength and think it's about never breaking. But real strength is in breaking and rebuilding differently. It's in taking the same pain that tried to silence you and turning it into purpose. It's in allowing your past to become a testimony instead of a prison. When you start living like that, your life itself becomes a message. You don't have to convince anyone of your growth. They'll see it. They'll see it in how you respond instead of react, in how you love instead of shut down, in how you rise without bitterness. Truth shows up in your posture, your peace, and your perseverance. It radiates through you quietly but powerfully. reminding everyone around you that it's possible to rise from ruins. Becoming the evidence of truth means you've stopped running from your story. You've stopped hiding the chapters that hurt. You've learned that pretending to be unbroken doesn't make you strong. It just makes you distant. But when you stand in your truth, when you say, yes, I've been through it and I'm still here, something shifts. You become a mirror for others who are still in their storms. You remind them that healing is messy, but worth it. That progress is slow, but sacred. And that survival itself is a kind of strength. You don't have to have all the answers. Your endurance becomes the answer. Your existence becomes the proof that truth can survive the fire. Truth changes you quietly. It doesn't need an announcement. It transforms your perspective, one decision at a time. The same battles that once made you question your worth now remind you of your power. The same rejection that once broke you now teaches you to value yourself differently. You begin to understand that everything that hurt you also taught you. The people who walked away showed you resilience. The moments of loss taught you gratitude, and the seasons of silence revealed your capacity to listen. Every piece of pain that was meant to destroy you has been recycled into wisdom. That's what living truth looks like. It's not perfection, it's redemption. As you live out that truth, you realize that it's not about proving anything to anyone. You don't need to prove you've changed. You don't need to prove you're healed. You just live in a way that peace becomes your evidence. You start making choices that align with your growth. You stop chasing closure and start creating peace. You stop begging for understanding and start embracing acceptance. Truth becomes the quiet rhythm of your life. It guides you in the background, whispering, you've come too far to go back now. It grounds you when everything feels unstable and reminds you that you don't have to force what's meant for you. You just have to stay true to who you are becoming. Every scar you carry holds a story of victory, even if it doesn't look like one. It tells the world that you've been through darkness and still found light. It reminds others that broken doesn't mean beyond repair. That waiting doesn't mean forgotten, and that slow progress is still progress. When you walk with that kind of authenticity, you don't just talk about faith, you demonstrate it. People start to see that truth in you, not because of what you say, but because of how you live. They see it in your peace after the storm, in your calm for the chaos, in your light after the loss. You become the living evidence that pain doesn't cancel purpose, it clarifies it. The beautiful thing about becoming the evidence of truth is that you no longer need everything to make sense. You stop trying to understand every reason and start embracing every revelation. You realize that maybe the breaking was necessary for the becoming. Maybe the waiting was preparing you for something greater than what you asked for. Maybe the loss was the clearing needed for your next chapter. Truth doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. It often comes through the hard lessons that strip away everything false. And when you've survived enough storms, you stop doubting your ability to withstand them. You start to trust that if you made it before, you'll make it again. That's when truth stops being something you believe in and starts being something you are.